Oh, hi there! You may have heard about the drama surrounding the Internet Archive over the last few years. They're currently fighting a lawsuit that's been called an existential threat to all libraries, media preservation, and an affront to fair use, while its detractors believe the archive knowingly and blatantly violated copyright law en masse. So what's going on? Well, first we need to talk about the Internet Archive itself. Founded in 1996 by Brewster Kahle, an American computer engineer and entrepreneur, the Internet Archive is an organization advocating for a free, open internet by providing unlimited access to digitized materials through its website, archive.org, and its various sister sites. As of the making of this video, the archive holds a staggering 806 billion archived web pages, 9.8 million movies, 15 million audio files, 2.5 million TV shows, nearly a million software programs, 9.6 million images, 250,000 concerts, 1.7 million collections, and 38 million print materials. These print materials are at the heart of the issue, containing over 4 million books that the Internet Archive have personally scanned into ebooks, of which includes 1.4 million books that are currently protected under United States copyright law. Fans of the channel know the Internet Archive is an invaluable resource for media preservation, and its Wayback Machine that lets users view old websites has been used to research and recover countless pieces of lost media. But as you can probably guess, a site with so much free content available to anyone with an internet connection has proven very controversial, being blocked in India, China, temporarily blocked in Turkey, and accused of hosting terrorist materials. But they are currently facing what I believe is their biggest threat to date. Typically, the archive lends out ebooks through its open library at an own-to-loan ratio, meaning if the Internet Archive owns a physical copy of a book, they scan it to create an ebook and let one person at a time borrow it through their website. If they own 2 physical copies of the same book, they could lend out 2 at a time, and so on. If all copies were checked out, you could join a waitlist. They're applying the same basic principles that libraries use to lend physical books, with the added steps of making a digital copy, some extra protections like DRM, digital resource management, that prevent borrowers from making copies of in-copyright works, and ensuring that the books are returned to the Internet Archive automatically after 14 days. These policies of own-to-loan ratio and DRM make up what's called CDL, Controlled Digital Lending. The IA has been using this system since 2011 to great success, with 70,000 daily borrowers. The practice of CDL has raised legal concerns, but had never been seriously challenged in court. That would change when, in response to the pandemic, the IA announced the National Emergency Library. To address our unprecedented global and immediate need for access to reading and research materials, as of today, March 24th, 2020, the Internet Archive will suspend waitlists for the 1.4 million and growing books in our lending library by creating a national emergency library to serve the nation's displaced learners. This suspension will run until June 30th, 2020, or the end of the U.S. national emergency, whichever is later. Oh, my sweet summer child. Basically what this meant is that the archive was offering unlimited copies of all of its books, even the ones that were still protected under copyright law due to the national emergency. The NEL was met with near universal acclaim from the general public. Hundreds of libraries and universities saw it as necessary to streamline education in newly created online spaces. But it was abhorrent by authors and their publishers. The Authors Guild explained, IA has no rights whatsoever to these books, much less to give them away indiscriminately without consent from the publisher or author. We are shocked that the Internet Archive would use the COVID-19 epidemic as an excuse to push copyright law further to the edges, and in doing so, harm authors, many of whom are already struggling. But even with the general public on the archive side, publishers had bipartisan support in Congress from Senator Tom Tillis and Tom Udall, and even members of the U.S. Copyright Office, all expressing concerns with the NEL. Senator Tom Tillis spoke on the subject. I'm concerned that the Internet Archive thinks that it, not Congress, gets to determine the scope of copyright law. And this all came to a head on June 16th, 2020, when the Internet Archive was slapped with a lawsuit from 4 of the world's largest book publishers: HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, Hachette Book Group, and Wiley, claiming that the Internet Archive committed willful mass copyright infringement, citing 127 books that they lent out through their open library. The archive responded by ending the NEL, but continued their traditional lending practices. In late 2020, the archive launched the Empowering Libraries campaign, framing the case as an existential threat to all libraries. Now, maybe this is standard in legal documents and I just haven't read enough of them, but in the publisher's complaint, Hatchet Book Group Inc. versus Internet Archive, you can just feel the disdain pouring out of the pages. It's like the Internet Archive personally insulted their mother. And not only was this a vicious attack on the archive and its founder, Brewster Kahle, but it was incredibly well written. In the legal complaint, they took aim at the Internet Archive's nonprofit status, noting $150 million in revenue, that they required user donations, upwards of $90, for the IA to scan books not in their library, their use of cheap overseas labor and volunteers to scan books, and lambasting the fact that when the archive did provide links to legally purchase copies of books, they led to Better World Books, a business owned by the IA's founder, Brewster Kahle. They even implied that when the archive does buy a legal copy of a book, they buy it through Better World Books as a means of profiting from unauthorized copies, stating, IA's book sponsorship scheme is breathtakingly brazen. In essence, IA tells users which copyrighted books it wants to infringe, then asks them to pay a donation far in excess of the list price of the book for IA to go out and buy a print copy from an undisclosed source, possibly Better World Books. Finally, IA uses the user's money to scan the book and put it online, where anyone can get a copy for free, completing the copyright infringement process without spending a single dollar of its own money. They call out the IA for trying to solve educational issues during COVID by depriving authors of sales they need to stay afloat, and at the same time referencing Section 110 of the Copyright Act, the TEACH Act, that accounts for teachers to make copyright exceptions during a health crisis without harming the publishing ecosystem. The document is full of these pointed attacks, but even more impressive is just how ruthless the subtext is. Woven throughout without explicitly saying any of it, the publisher's legal team implies that the Internet Archive is un-American by violating the spirit of copyright intended by the Founding Fathers, that the IA is harming the education system by not paying for authors' works, that they cause monetary loss to authors from marginalized groups, Nobel Prize winners, and beloved children's authors, again, without actually saying any of it. If you can't tell, I had a great time reading the complaint. I've always been biased in favor of the Internet Archive, but this document was just so well written and at times almost sassy. It would be hilarious if it didn't point to such unsettling consequences. There are two elements of the complaint in particular that could have devastating long-term effects for libraries and media preservation. The attack of controlled digital lending and an attack on the first sale doctrine when applied to digital media. Basically, the copyright rule that allows you to sell things secondhand, books, CDs, movies, etc. The plaintiffs wrote, IA defends its willful mass infringement by asserting an invented theory called controlled digital lending, the rules of which have been concocted from whole cloth and continue to get worse. For example, at first, under this theory, IA claimed to limit the number of scanned copies of a title available for free download at any one time to the number of print books of that title in its collection, though no provision under copyright law offers a colorable defense to the systematic copying and distribution of digital book files simply because the actor collected corresponding physical copies. Next in their crosshairs was the first sale doctrine. The publisher stated, it permits the owner of a copy to distribute the particular copy that has been lawfully acquired, for example, as in the secondary sale of a hardcover book or painting. But it provides no exemption from the copyright holder's exclusive right to produce a work. Faced with these inconvenient facts, IA has also advanced the illogical premise that its massive illegal copyright and distribution is format shifting, protected under the fair use doctrine. But the rudimentary use of a scanner to format shift, print books into digital works for distribution to the public does not constitute either a permitted personal use or a transformative use. The action squarely intrudes upon the exclusive rights under Section 17 USC 106, and no exception of any kind applies. So now that we've heard from the publishers, does the Internet Archive have any legal precedent to support their actions concerning the National Emergency Library or their practice of controlled digital lending? There are a few cases that might help us out. The first are the cases of Google Books and Hathi Trust. In these two separate suits, the courts upheld the right to digitize books, protecting Google's mass preservation effort to create a fully searchable text database. But the winning caveat in both cases was that the entire book isn't made freely available for all users, only allowing them to search for keywords and view small portions of the overall work. Another notable case that's come up in discussions is Capitol Records LLC versus Redigi Inc. Redigi was an online platform where users could resell digital copies of songs they had legally purchased from places like iTunes. They were sued by Capitol Records in 2012, and Redigi's defense was that they were protected under the first sale doctrine, that if you could sell a physical item secondhand, you could sell digital goods secondhand as well. Redigi would lose this case, with the court's ruling that though the seller's copy of the song was deleted upon being sold on Redigi, a new copy of the file was made in the sales process. And their reasoning for this was, in their own words, the dictionary defines reproduction to mean to produce again, or to cause existence again, or anew. Just to clarify this, Redigi lost the case based on an overly analytical definition of the word reproduced from just one of many dictionary definitions. These are my personal feelings on the matter, but it sounds to me like the judge didn't think what Redigi was doing should be legal, so they found a convoluted way to make it illegal. It's even a little bit paradoxical. The ruling almost implies that when a file is sent digitally, it's no longer the same file. It's been produced again, anew. But at the same time, it's similar enough for the rights holders to be able to sue over its existence. Regardless, the case essentially put to rest the idea of the first sale doctrine in the realm of digital media. In addition to these few cases, Kyle K. Courtney, a lawyer and copyright advisor for Harvard University, penned an article defending the IA, stating that fair use is flexible depending on circumstances, and bringing up the 4 factors of fair use related to copyrighted works. 1. The purpose and character of the use. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. How much of the copyrighted work was used. And 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for the copyrighted work. Courtney believes that the NLE falls under the first tenet because it was for educational use, and the fourth tenet because there is no market for emergency use during a global crisis. So after years of preparation, the first hearing was held on March 20th, 2023, and it did not last long. On March 24th, 2023, Judge Kodal ruled against the Internet Archive, saying that the National Emergency Library was not fair use and it infringed on the copyright of the publishers. The judge stated, "In March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic closed libraries nationwide and by IA's estimation took 650 million print books out of circulation, judging itself uniquely positioned to be able to address the problem quickly and efficiently." Citing the Redigi case, the judge ruled that although Section 109 entitles IA and its partner libraries to resell and lend their lawfully acquired print copies of the works in suit, unauthorized reproduction, which is at the heart of IA's online library, is not protected. The IA's nonprofit status didn't protect them either. Judge Kodal citing a case where a church was successfully sued for posting copyrighted materials to its website. Even though the church didn't gain monetarily, they gained clout by hosting the work and could gain more donations by doing so. The judge also tested the case against the previously mentioned tenets of fair use, heavily favoring the publishers in each category. And it seems that not only did the publisher's legal team do an excellent job, IA's defense seemed to have done a pretty poor job, citing legal precedents that had little to do with the matter at hand. The archive pointed to Doan versus American Book Company, but the judge said, that century-old case merely held that the owner of a school book could reproduce new copies of the book's cover. The Internet Archive lawyers also cited the 1984 case where Sony was sued for manufacturing Betamax machines that allowed customers to record TV. Again, the judge didn't agree that it was related, and used the previously mentioned case of Google Books against them. Unlike Sony, which only sold the machines, IA scans a massive number of copies of books and makes them available to patrons rather than purchasing ebook licenses from the publishers. Although IA has the right to lend print books it lawfully acquired, it does not have the right to scan those books and lend the digital copies en masse. To hold otherwise would be to ignore the teachings of the Court of Appeals in Google Books, that there would be a strong claim for copyright infringement if Google had distributed digitized copies of complete books. The judge continued to dismantle the Internet Archive's argument. IA's fair use defense rests on the notion that lawfully acquiring a copyrighted print book entitles the recipient to make an unauthorized copy and distribute it in place of the print book, so long as it does not simultaneously lend the print book. But no case or legal principle serves that notion. Every authority points the other direction. IA's defense of fair use with respect of the NEL therefore also fails. He continued by warning the archive against using the first sale doctrine in their appeal, citing that its use in digital media has already been decided in the case of Redigi, and that any broader scope of the first sale doctrine should be sought from Congress, not the courts. This is a devastating blow to the Internet Archive and their open library. But what does the verdict mean for the future of archive.org? As far as the Internet Archive goes, I do not believe they're going anywhere. I think they broke copyright law with the best intentions. And even though the publishers are asking the archive to pay for every single copyrighted book that they lent out through the NEL, along with paying the publisher's legal fees, there is precedent that the IA might not have to pay if they can prove that they genuinely believe that their actions were within the realm of fair use. And even if they are forced to pay millions in damages, the lawsuit demonstrated that the IA has plenty of money, and it likely won't be closing its doors due to this lawsuit. But what worries me is the precedent this case sets for digital lending as a whole, giving more power to publishers to levy against libraries, and possibly sue others for loaning out ebooks. All in all, this is very unsettling and shows the cracks in the American legal system. The justification for Capitol Records versus Redigi is based on an absurd reading of laws that could not have accounted for future technology, and at times it's even contradictory. This flawed ruling is now being used to make controlled digital lending unlawful, which will likely be used to support additional regulations limiting libraries, preservation, and the scope of future technologies. The Internet Archive has appealed the decision, saying the ruling holds back access to information in the digital age, harming all readers everywhere. Thank you so much for watching. This is a much different video than I usually make, but I felt it was an important topic to cover considering the potential impact it could have on media preservation. If you have suggestions for future videos, let me know in the comments. And a huge shout out to my top tier Patreon supporters: Odesta Honeycrisp, MD the Dude, Vinny Cataldo, Miss Dana, and Can You Say Rote Goat Mafleur. Thank you so much. This is Mike with All Things Lost. See you soon.